Hello and welcome to the special episode of Simply inTAXicating on the making and faking of Indian currency. In contrast to an average of 1 year shelf life of our banknotes, the same for the US dollar may sound like a folklore. As per the Federal Reserve Bank of the USA, the $100 denomination survives for 15 years and $20 denomination lasts for as many as 7 years. And one fundamental difference which goes in the making of these currencies is that India uses cotton and cotton rags for the manufacture of bank paper, whereas the US uses cotton and linen fabrics. Linen makes it crispy and lends a long life. Let's now turn to the most common experience. I'm sure there would hardly be any Indian who has not come across a fake banknote. How did it come and reach the wallet of a common Indian? Who are the suppliers of such notes? Who are trying to damage our trust in the widely loved currency? Hold on. Before the panelists answer all the questions, let's take a look at the comparative security features of the Indian currency and the US dollar. Indian rupee, security thread, partially exposed and partially embedded in the paper. Latent, hidden image. Micro lettering can be seen only with the help of magnifying glass. Identification mark. Intaglio printing, raised printing. Fluorescence, printing in fluorescent ink. Optical fibers can be seen only when the notes are exposed to ultraviolet lamp. Optically variable ink, color shifting ink. US dollar. Security thread, embedded and not printed, runs from top to bottom. Intaglio printing process. Portraits on US bills are sharper and contain very fine detailing. Watermark is generally embedded. Color shifting ink is used and can be seen when the bill is tilted. Microprinting is another feature which is very difficult to reproduce. US dollar paper not sold commercially. Composition of paper and ink highly confidential. Let me now take you to our panelists who are going to answer many of your unanswered questions.
Hello and welcome to Simply inTAXicating. In the second episode on the making and faking of the Indian rupee, as promised in the first episode, our two distinguished guests, Dr. Suraj Kumar and Mr. Sumit Majumder, will be dealing with the issues of currency empowerment of the citizens, the smuggling of fake Indian currency notes printed by one country but pumped into India through other countries having borders with us, incentive for the common man to report detection of fake currency, terror financing through FICN, printing of other security documents like passport, visa stickers, Kisan Vikas Patra, holograms, various kinds of certificates which are issued by various government departments. So let me start with Mr. Majumder, who is going to tell us about whether there is a need for the Indian Finance Minister to make an announcement with respect to currency empowerment of the citizens so that they are able to make a distinction between authentic and a fake currency note.
A person, it is very difficult for him to make out. But your other proposal, I would rather go by that there should be incentivized, which Dr. Suraj also has been saying. The incentivize bringing the matters to a notice instead of send him to the Thana for filing an FIR. And he asks the Thanedar, asks him 100 questions. Then he said, Choro, I'll leave my two fake currency notes here, I am going. So that is a better option. You can't make so many people aware of how to make a distinction between fake and
some efforts have to be made. I mean, not necessarily 1 billion people cannot be.
I would put it's very difficult, because a person who is in the shop, he is receiving money every day. He is trained for that. He has a trained eye. But a common man, he goes, purchases maybe once or twice in a day, and then he gets something in return that once or twice a day. So he is not so trained to make a distinction between the...
But maybe, sir, this organized forums like you have resident welfare, for instance, NGO, for instance, you have the traders association, for instance, they can be incentivized again.
No, incentivized, but your main problem will go once you do everything in India. The chance of you are hitting at the root of manufacturing fake India currency and getting it smuggled to India. So that problem is still there. As I mentioned in the previous session, that about how I told the evolution. Now, right now also it is there. Now the route is changing. Now there has been a seizure in Delhi of about 25 lakhs coming from China. China was never in the picture. Obviously, it was not manufactured in China. It has gone from our western border country to China. We have a seizure from Dubai, another 50 lakhs.
Right.
So it very recent. That I'm talking about last 1 or 2 months. So these things remain. So these problems will go only by from the point where you started. Make in India. Make in India everything, paper, ink, and cut at the root cause of this thing. And in the meantime, whatever is in circulation for that, what Dr. Suraj is also saying, incentivize so that the people, common men can come and get something in different way, you are also saying.
And maybe even not only incentivize the common man, but also to punish the bankers who continue to ignore the fake currency as a part of the lot which they are giving to a common citizen.
Talking about continue to ignore, about 4 years back, I think, in Uttar Pradesh, in one of the border area, Gorakhpur, I think, near Gorakhpur, bank manager was involved. So the whole lot of fake Indian currency was stashed, found there. And what they used to do is that poor people who coming for getting the money in a bunch of actual notes, they will put some fake currencies also. So, and they were caught. So these are the criminals. And RBI had taken, the bank also had taken action. So these are the...
But that was the connivance part. So, but the other part is the negligence part, where I withdrew 5,000 bucks cash from a bank, and I find that in 5,000 there are 4 fake 500 note currencies.
No, unless you see, these days all banks are very alert. They have the system of detection. For bank side, there is no problem. They can detect whether it is fake or not.
But they are not.
So,
That is why I am saying.
That is connivance. That will only because of connivance those things will come. Otherwise, in routine matter, it will not come.
Unless someone is stuffing the ATM.
Yes.
Okay, it is difficult to imagine a situation because all banknotes are numbered, they are tracked. Absolutely. In this age, it's very easy to sort of actually make sure that you are aware of each and every banknote that is going through. So certainly that is going to be a very difficult task to pinpoint and say, okay, fine, we need to hit where the connivance is happening. It would either be undetectable or even if detectable, may be politically very difficult to deal with. But I do think that we need to, first of all, make people aware of the threat. Okay, I think the threat perception in India is seriously missing. Just as we are not aware of the threat of fire and other things, certainly most of us are not aware of the threat in the sense we imagine that it is there, but we wake up to it only when it happens to us.
That's true.
Okay, but the fact that it could happen to you should be the theme of a campaign. Yes. And I do think that people, whether illiterate, rural, remote, doesn't matter, they take money very seriously.
Yes. So this brings us to the terror financing part. To what extent the terror financing actually supports the free movement of these fake currencies from across the border, and how serious is this problem for India?
When you support terrorism, when somebody supports terrorism in our country, so you have to finance him. So what is the best way of financing him? You give him fake Indian currency. He will not carry, it will be done by some other agency and it will reach him. So in one go, you are hitting at 2 things. A, he is doing the terror act,
right,
and that terror act is getting financed from this. And B, this fake Indian currency gets circulated in the market.
So destabilizing the economy also.
Poor man gets affected, and come back to my point that he loses faith in the trust in the state, the sovereign. Right. So this is a very dangerous thing. And we had evidence. DRI has been doing a wonderful job from the very beginning, a leading role which has been recognized also, that they have been doing, they've even seized, there are initial period, there are certain seizures, along with fake Indian currency, there were arms and ammunition. Mm-hmm. Along with drugs, there were arms and ammunition. Mm-hmm. So there was a design that these will be meant for that terrorism. So that remains, that's why it's I give so much importance to this making paper and making ink as a part of the Make in India, as a very important one. I think this is a laudable effort of the government that they will be hitting at the source of the FICN
But how exactly we are able to prevent it? So have we stepped up our efforts in terms of setting up dedicated cell, sensitizing and gearing up our
government did have. All the intelligence agencies were brought under one umbrella. They were brought under one umbrella. They exchange views and information. There are nodal agencies. DRI is one of the nodal agencies for the
for the border, yeah,
and for the local Caesars, it is CBI.
Right. This is CBI, yes.
So the other agencies, all agencies, they exchange information, and it was going on very well. It is going on very well, rather. That is there. Now the grassroots administration. There, I will say a few things. Now, you can't expect DRI to have their office at every point in the border. They'll be in the main centers where they collect intelligence, and then they pass it on. Sometimes on intelligence they hit directly. Generally, I mean, from my experience, I'll tell you, one who collects intelligence, he doesn't. General intelligence he shares. Specific information he doesn't share. He does it himself. Because even the informer doesn't want their information to be shared. So if he collects, DRI has to hit. But then what has happened, if you recall, in the previous session I was mentioning, now the modus operandi seems to be the bring it into small things.
Right.
So small things will come in small places, like, it is not restricted to Malda alone. All over the Indo-Bangladesh border, this is happening. The small places. You can't have DRI offices everywhere. So what is to be done? So there are preventive units of the Preventive Commissionerate of Customs. One is in West Bengal, one is in Northeast, entire Northeast, based in, I think, Shillong. Shillong is the headquarters. So there, and then even for the other border we are neglecting is that Indo-Myanmar border.
Right.
If you recall, if you did not on fake Indian currency, DRI made a seizure of some 87 or 83 kgs
the drugs recently, yes, sir.
And that had come from the
Myanmar side, yeah.
So that this border is also, but fortunately the government there, they are friendly government. And so we are getting a lot of help. So FICN we have not yet known, but it might come in.
So apart from customs, the local police and other agencies also
customs are coming again. So the customs have to be strengthened. So in those sensitive areas, because they will have to take the role. Now what has happened? BSF is everywhere. The inch by inch BSF is covering. So the seizure, as I mentioned, seizure of BSF, seizure of small numbers are increasing, which is a good thing that they are doing it. So customs is not inch by inch that not covering.
What about the police? Sir, our local state police is really sensitized about this issue.
Police is for internal things. The transborder thing, police has no responsibility.
No, but once it is already inside.
Yes, inside that they have.
They are able to do it.
Police is making a lot of seizure.
They are
That's
doing
why
it.
CBI is the
local nodal
agency for that.
But in case of that, reminds me of one very interesting statistics which was compiled by the Financial Intelligence Unit, which collects data from all the banks. And they have a system where the public sector banks, the private sector bank, foreign banks, they report the fake currency instances, transactions to them. And they, in 2013, they were reported about 3,62,000 instances of fake currencies reported, and out of the 3,62,000, roughly about 3,40,000 were reported by the private banks only. So there was an observation that our public sector banks are still not taking this problem seriously. And now the problem is that our public sector banks are the banks which are generally available in rural areas across the country. It is not private sector bank. For them, it is not viable to set up, branches in rural areas where they will not have high transactions.
So
the cost of operation.
There cannot be any excuse for the public sector bank not to have these systems. They must have the how to deal with. They are the ones who deal with the currency.
And they are not reporting.
And it's not a very big thing.
It clearly indicates that they are not taking it in very seriously.
No, if the shop establishments can detect, they can detect. Because they have the thing, I don't see.
They have the tools, they have the technology.
So that some initiative has not been taken by some of the public sector banks.
Absolutely, sir. That brings us to one more point, sir. This, apart from the security bank papers and security inks and printing, etc., the other interesting aspect is that other documents like travel documents, we have passport, for instance, visa sticker, for instance, hologram, for instance. We have the Kishan Vikas Patra certificates being printed on the security papers, because again, if it is forged, then there would be a loss for the for the government. Similarly, we have the PIO cards, for instance. There are several documents which require this kind of security papers. So that is again, this is looking at the more and more Indians are traveling, more and more passports, for instance, are required, with the awareness going up. So this should be again, this is going to be a major incentive for Make in India effort, where the equal amount of focus needs to be put on this aspect.
I would say that the embedding of chips into critical documents, is a welcome step. It is, and by the way, just want to make it very clear that this is not a problem confined to India. The point I'm trying to make is that therefore it's not an issue that is confined to India. There needs to be a global convention on this. The importance of having a global convention. Because obviously we have all sorts of global conventions, all sorts of things. Yeah. But this is a $3 trillion business. And so either we integrate it into all the conventions pertaining to counter-terrorism and pertaining to trade in small arms, landmines, explosive remnants of war. All sorts of conventions are there. So we need to make sure, that the compliance reporting includes this particular aspect of counterfeiting. And I think that given the fact that the current government is very keen to project India's soft power abroad, taking up these issues in international fora would be an important foreign policy initiative.
After Industrial Revolution, the digital revolution which all of us are experiencing today is the next big phenomenon. And it is undoubtedly changing, rather expanding the contours of our existence, whether we live in cities or hinterland. And e-commerce happens to be the heart of this phenomenon. Whether we realize it or not, e-commerce is increasingly becoming an inevitable part of our daily life. However, this rapidly emerging industry is not without its own share of troubles, regulatory, fiscal and many more. Watch out for our episode of Simply Intaxicating E-Trouble Other in E-Commerce for an incisive analysis of all such issues by the domain experts.
Before we wrap up this program, I would like to know your opinion on this melting of Indian coins, which has been, for several decades a serious problem. We have 1 rupee coin, we have 2 rupee coin, we have 5 rupee, we have 10 rupees coin. So these coins, again, the face value versus the metal value, that has been the question of conflict. And this problem largely, my observation is that has been reported from the eastern part of India. Yeah. Most of the eastern India.
What you are hinting at is that smuggling of coins to Bangladesh. In a big quantity it was found, right. And that it was going mainly for minting purpose. Now here's the basic issue is how do you make the coin? Now while making the coin you have a choice of making it a very high purity. High purity means I think the nickel content should be more. Yeah, right. So high purity coin so that counterfeiting will be difficult. And if you make high purity, the incentive for melting becomes much. So the 10 rupees coin, by melting the nickel that you got and the high quality steel that you got, which is used for your artificial jewelry and other things, and the nickel handicraft and all, and the nickel you got, the worth may be more than 15 rupees, 20 rupees. Even after cutting your manufacturing cost of melting, right. It is higher. But at the same time, if you keep it low, then your counterfeiting becomes easier. Right. So you have to have a balance.
So that is how the size has been gradually coming down.
And yes.
Coin, 2 rupee coin.
Right.
And the nickel proportion.
So already I think it is on the wane. It is in the wane now.
Before I thank my panelist, let us also hear Mr. M.S. Rana, the CMD of the Security Printing and Minting Corporation of India Limited.
See, what happens is when we make a coin, we keep the metal content value, which is the face value. If it is very low, it is an incentive for counterfeiting. Absolutely. And if the metal value is more than the face value, it is a candidate for melting. So we have to keep the metal content value about 30% to about 60% of the total face value. But what happens in case of non-ferrous metal, nickel, etc., they are very volatile sometime in the international market. So suddenly if the price of the nickel shoots up, it can go beyond the face value. So we have to prevent that actually.
Let me thank both of you for your wonderful insight into it. and there have been serious and very valid points being made by both the panelists. For instance, the government of India efforts in the direction of Make in India and Make in India for India. That's a right step in the right direction, which is going to take care of the several aspects of this rupee problem, particularly counterfeiting, and that is perhaps the best solution we have. But of course, that solution needs to be supplemented by taking other initiative where the common man, the common citizens need to be empowered with the necessary information to make a distinction between authenticity of a currency and the fake dimension of the currency. How to make a distinction is a tough question before a common man. Then there should be some efforts to incentivize the citizens who come and report about, the smaller instances of fake currency rather than, huge amount. So then it will be an incentive for the gangsters to come forward, the syndicates operating in this area. So the citizens should be incentivized. If somebody comes to the banking system, report about it, their loss should be compensated, because that will again give the exact figure. Because more and more people who will come across instances of fake notes will come and report, and RBI at the end of the year will know that how much of fake currency is available in the market, because today it's a game of speculation. Nobody knows about it. Then again, the public sector banks need to be a little more proactive in reporting about this kind of instances of fake notes. And then India, of course, given the size, given the availability of technical know-how, India of course needs to strengthen its R&D and the skilled, the hands which are available in this country. India has the inherent and natural advantage of becoming a hub for printing currencies, not only for India meeting their own, its own requirement, but also for South Asia and maybe some African countries, for instance. So let us hope that it does not remain a dream, which Prime Minister Mr. Modi has been seeing it for quite some time, and very proactively asking RBI and other agencies, Ministry of Finance, for instance, to go ahead with this. And this Make in India efforts will go a long way in actually making us and enabling every citizen of this country to truly take pride in our own currency. Thanking for watching TIOL.